Hi, it's David again, and I'm back after a little bit of a hiatus with the Opposite of Cheating video podcast. I'm here today with Amanda McKenzie, an old friend from the International Center for Academic Integrity. We've been working together on and off for years and years, including work in Europe doing consulting and online in Ukraine, all sorts of amazing things. Amanda and I have really different backgrounds, and that's one of the things that makes it so much fun to work with you, Amanda. Amanda comes from a quality assurance background, which I think informs a lot of the things that you do and the way you think about academic integrity. Amanda's currently the Director of Academic Integrity at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, where she's been doing some amazing work on all parts of the academic integrity spectrum. So thanks for joining, Amanda. Really happy to have you.
So happy to be here, David. Thank you.
I gave a little bit of a sort of the quick summary of how you got here, but would you tell us a little bit about your academic and professional background, and sort of a little bit about academic integrity at Waterloo?
Sure, absolutely. I've been doing academic integrity at Waterloo for about 13 years now. And I know one of your questions, I think, is, how did you know or what did you know about academic integrity when you came into this role? And to be honest, I didn't. I knew nothing. So when I assumed the role of managing our Office of Academic Integrity at Waterloo, I had a steep learning curve to really educate myself about what academic integrity was all about. And then after I got a really good foothold in it, then I started to do some other activities with the International Center for Academic Integrity and locally in our provincial groups in Ontario, as well as helping set up ICAI Canada for our national kind of branch of ICAI. After doing academic integrity, I got tapped to move into quality assurance at Waterloo. So I started and built our quality assurance office from the ground up and was in that area for about 8 years. And now I've cycled back just to focus on academic integrity and really working more now on remedial development. So looking at what a remediation process would look like, trying to do remediational work like circles and those types of things, knowing that it's really hard to actually have a true restorative process. So those are kind of the things that are top of mind right now for me in the office. And of course, obviously, generative artificial intelligence is on everyone's mind. So yeah, I should also say that our office is a little bit different. We've been lucky at Waterloo to have an Office of Academic Integrity since 2008, so that makes us a pretty long-standing office. We've had a remedial workshop since I think 2009 or 10, so that's also a really long time, which is kind of cool. And oh, I forget where I was going with that, so I'll just stop. Back to you.
Well, I know where I'd like to go with that, which is for those of you out there who have been Googling the field trying to figure out how to catch up. Many of you have probably seen some of the really amazing online work that Waterloo has done over the years. You've had a big role in some of those things. What are some of the things that one of the projects at Waterloo that you're really proud of?
Right. Well, I was so lucky when I took the office on. Again, we had a long foothold at the university before I took it over in 2012. And again, it had been around since 2008. So when I came on, they actually had this amazing suite of promotional campaigns and also a tagline, which was work, study, play with integrity. And I just love that because it's just not focused on students, it focuses on the academic or the culture of it at all levels, right? I remember what I was going to say now. I was going to say that our office is a bit different because we don't do any of the investigations for any academic misconduct or any of the punishments or sanctions. So our office is really kind of bookends with the proactive messaging in the beginning with developing resources. So we've developed a lot of learning modules, some based on the 6 fundamental values from ICAI. Another suite of those are focused on students in STEM in particular. And actually, they're free for use on our website and available online. So people can take them and actually we can provide files to um, customize them as people need. So that's some of the neat work that we've done in addition to the remedial workshops, which is the other end. After the offenses have occurred, we try to work with students to change their decision making so they make better and more successful choices going forward in their academic career.
I think that captures some things that Trish and I talk about a lot in the book, some of which I think has been influenced by the work you've been doing all these years, which is to say, of course, you want to try to communicate and prevent misconduct as much as you possibly can. But when it does happen, because people are human and they do make bad choices, we it is our responsibility to help them be successful after that happens, and that we have tools at our disposal to do that.
Absolutely.
So the book is about academic integrity and pedagogy, and I'm a big believer in the notion that pedagogy doesn't just happen in the classroom, and that, like you said, the culture of an institution is going to really reflect the things we want our students to learn. So, from your perspective as someone who teaches students outside the classroom, what are some of the big lessons you'd like for our students to take away from their time at Waterloo?
Hmm. I think if they could think in reverse, and what I mean by that is to think, I think students come in and they know that they want to have a job and a career, but they don't give that too much credence or thought. So I think they hurry to get through so they can get to that career with missing some of the key parts. And that would be where they might take shortcuts. And I think if they realize that those shortcuts, if they take them now, could have long-term consequences on their career and where they go afterwards, that they wouldn't shortchange themselves. So I would really like students to think about, the long-term effects. And I would love more and more. We are a cooperative education school, which means we have students go out on work term and then come back for an academic term and go out on work term. So you can actually graduate with a year or more of work experience, which is amazing. And I would love somehow to maybe bring employers in to talk to students about why the integrity is so important, because I think they'd hear it differently than when they would from just their instructors. So that's something that I'll be perhaps exploring as we move forward with activities in our office.
That's really cool. Makes a lot of sense, especially since AI is becoming so embedded in both the workplace and the academic setting. How are you seeing those connections change in your office? What are the kinds of things people are doing? What are the kinds of things you're hearing from employers, if anything?
Mm. I don't have a lot of direct contact with employers, but again, being a co-op school, we have different units that are very engaged and are surveying employers to see how much they are asking students to use generative artificial intelligence. And reports are is that there is a high use of these tools in the workplace, and that employers are now expecting our students to be graduating with those skills. So not only my unit, but I think most universities are trying to figure out where do we fit this in the curriculum. Is it in first year courses? Do we thread it into where it's faculty specific? How do we make sure that students have those skills? I think what my office is really focused on is really the ethical use of it. So I'm not for or against. Actually, I think I probably am more for GenAI because I do see that it's got a lot of positives as far as its ability to go through volumes of information and pull things together that humans just, it would either take us years to do or it's near impossible for us to accomplish. Also, the ways that it can support students who have different needs. So, especially with accessibility issues, those kind of things, I think it can do amazing things. And even being a study buddy, like, who wouldn't want to use those tools? It's just the matter of knowing where the line is. And I know that there's been interesting articles by our colleagues out of Australia about, what is this line? But I think we're still struggling with what that line looks like. And I'm not sure if higher education's got that really figured out yet. And I think it's going to be prone to change. But we need to just keep talking about it and normalizing that these are proper uses of Gen AI and what uses of Gen AI an instructor doesn't want a student to do. And we need to just keep being very clear about what that is to our students.
I totally agree. It's funny you say you think you're pro AI, and I call myself an AI skeptic, but being against AI is like being against, I don't know, the television. That ship has sailed, right? It's here. We can't be against it. The question, like you said, is what is our relationship to this technology? And
Mhm.
you said something else that's really interesting, which is where's the line? But that's a metaphor, right? There's no one line and there's no
No,
one set of rules. So I think if I'm understanding you right, what you're saying is we want to get students and the rest of us to understand what the principles of use are so that we can apply them in a lot of different situations. Is that
absolutely. Absolutely.
Have you come across any principles that you think have been useful for ways to communicate about this question to your students?
That is a good question. I've done a lot of looking at the different principles from UNESCO, from the Russell Group in the UK. We have something called the U15 of research universities in Canada, and of course, other government examples. And the principles are kind of all are very similar around the core tenets that they have. And I think part of the piece that we're going to be really undetermined yet is like the copyright and the ownership piece. I'm so curious to see where that goes, because I think that is the most unknown part in this whole thing right now. But the other pieces that are important, of course, is again the ethical use of what you're doing, making sure that you're not taking a shortcut, so you're not missing out on the learning opportunities. It's really easy to rely on something, and I think we're just so accustomed now to being able to look at our phones or look at the internet to find information, but are we really synthesizing it? So this is the important part, probably with the QA part, which I know you want to talk about more, is that we need to be also confident that when students are graduating, that they know their stuff, that they are actually learning the content. So again, those things will be really important to make sure that students just aren't over reliant on the technology, and that there's always still that human component, because as we all know that GenAI wants to give you an answer no matter whether it's right or wrong. So we have to be very careful to make sure that that information is correct and we're vetting it, and not just blindly accepting what this tool is saying.
Correct and appropriate, because even if something is factually correct, it doesn't necessarily mean it's something we want to put out in the world.
Like,
Right. So talking about then QA,
mm,
what are some of so one of the big things we talk a lot about in the book is backward design and starting with basic principles of learning objectives. Given your background in bringing together QA and academic integrity, do you see any changes in the kinds of learning objectives we should be shooting for, of course, across disciplines,
mm.
as AI comes in or as we start to just move ahead in general?
I think it'd be really easy to say digital literacy as a course, a top one, or AI literacy as they've been referring to it. So I'm not sure if it should be an actual degree level expectation. I think that's something that will need to be fleshed out. So in Canada, we have a degree level standards, which are based on the Bologna process, which is more of an international standardized system, let's say. And academic integrity is actually built into that under one of the categories. And I think most people don't pull that out. Anyway, in Canada, I don't think we pull it out enough. So that's one of the things that I would really like to see in QA, is to use that piece more. So at Waterloo, what we did is we built questions about academic integrity into our self-study, our program review process. So we're asking programs at a programmatic level to look at what they are contributing to academic integrity and how they are addressing it with their students and their instructors and their teaching assistants, and maybe even the researchers. Now, even though it's in there, we've seen that some of the responses have not been very robust. So I think it's a work in progress. It's like planting the seed. This is something that we need to pay attention to. And I think it's really key because in Canada and the US, we don't have like one agency or one body to really oversee these things for quality assurance. And in Canada, in fact, we don't even have a national Department of Education. It's all done on a provincial level. So it's hard to thread the things together, but we have a good foundation of having it in there. So again, I think with Gen AI, to maintain academic integrity, we need to keep talking about it, because people, I think, as you know, David, over the years, I mean, we can exhaust ourselves talking about academic integrity, but we need to keep talking about it, because we find that people don't always know. They don't know what they don't know, or when they don't know it until they get into trouble, like a student that's gotten offense. And that's really unfortunate. You would love to proactively talk to that student and have that conversation rather than them getting into that situation with an offense.
Absolutely. And this maybe brings back to where you started us, which is connecting this to bigger picture ethical and workplace questions. Have you been doing that explicitly in some of your responses to misconduct that you've been building? or is that something that's coming down the pike?
I think that's still coming down the pipes. Unfortunately, at Waterloo, we don't have identified principles for Gen AI as of yet. We sort of just point to what our U15 group of research universities in Canada has put out, but we're very close. So it's been interesting to see how different institutions have either really been on top of this and out of the gate had their principles quite clear, or it's taken them a little longer. So unfortunately, we were a bit slower, but that will be coming out soon. And the more information that we can provide to our instructors and to students as well, and to staff, because I think sometimes we forget this should be a holistic conversation, kind of like that work, study, play with integrity. It addresses all three of those groups. So does Gen AI. We just can't have that student and instructor conversation. Staff are in the mix too.
Yeah, I completely agree that the cultures don't just happen with two-thirds of the university. Cultures happen when everybody's pulling in the same direction. Let's go back to the very beginning, to your origin. You started in the academic integrity office at Waterloo, and you talked about your steep learning curve. What's one
Mm.
thing for someone who's now joining this conversation, being brought into academic integrity, perhaps dragged in from the AI world? What's maybe a first thing that they should think about if you think back to your time at the beginning?
Oh boy, I think I was quickly introduced to ICAI, and I mean, I hate to be one to be redundant and repetitive, but I always go back to the six fundamental values. They are just such a core piece of, I think, not just academic integrity, but integrity in the way we characterize ourselves and carry ourselves. I think for anyone who's thinking about how do I get this in front of people and make it tangible, I believe breaking down those fundamental values could be easily understood by students and instructors and staff, and giving them examples. And I love that in the third version that we did of the fundamental values, we actually give concrete examples of what honesty looks like, what courageousness looks like, how to be fair. And I think that those could go a long way because they're just so simple, but we just don't take the time to look at them and what really matters to us with our values as much as I think we should.
I completely agree. And I think for those of you who don't entirely know what we're referring to, the International Center for Academic Integrity has proposed a set of values for integrity. And so we think of academic integrity as a set of positive goods towards which we all aspire, as opposed to just what happens when you break the rules. It's in fact where this notion of the opposite of cheating really gets its origin. So if you came to this from the book and you're curious about where to go from there, I agree with Amanda. Academicintegrity.org, you can find the fundamental values and all sorts of other useful information there. That's a great piece of advice. It seems obvious to me, and it's good to be reminded of it. And so starting from the beginning and getting to the end. So now we all are going to have students who use AI improperly this year. Anyone who's looking at this video and millions of others. What's one piece of advice you can give them about that situation, in particular about communicating with your students?
Mm. We've done some work to really educate students on ways that they can protect themselves. And I think sometimes we don't think of it that way because sometimes I think groups come from more of a policing or a rules-based focus. But I'd really like to focus on student success. So in our course outlines now, we're encouraging instructors to relay that students should be keeping their drafts, their outlines, their rough work, what references they used, what prompts they used, if they used a prompt to in a Gen AI tool, and also be prepared to speak to their work or replicate it. So this is different, right? This is really puts the accountability back on the student that they can't just skate by, that perhaps at some point someone might call me on my stuff and ask me to demonstrate what I know. And I think that's going to be really crucial as we go forward. And I was going to mention that, of course, Australia, as we know, is always moving further ahead in the field than most other parts of the world. And the University of Melbourne has come out with something called assured learning. And their QA body down there, Texa, is very actively involved with the Gen AI movement and trying to get a feel for what their institutions are doing. Anyway, University of Melbourne is moving towards a system where they want at least 50% of a subject mark to be in a secure assessment situation. So that would be either you're going to present on it, it could be an invigilated exam, it could be an oral exam. Yeah, those kind of things. So that's going to be key, I think, for instructors in higher education going forward as a way that we can really validate that students are being able to graduate with these competencies. And they have another part two of that too, which is a little more complicated, which was more of like a programmatic level assessment. And I think that is alluding to more of like before you move to second year, make sure that you have everyone has this foundational knowledge. And I believe that Phil spoke about this in his podcast with Trisha. So I'm really excited about those ideas going forward when it comes to how we navigate with GenAI in a way to make sure that students still have the competencies and the skills that we're saying they have before their degrees are conferred.
Yeah, that's so important. I totally agree with you. We spent a lot of time in the book on the teaching and learning aspects of it, and there is a chapter on assessment security. But the reason we didn't write a book on assessment security is that Phil Dawson already wrote it, and it's fantastic. Um, but Amanda, your point is so spot on. So I think if we take seriously the notion that higher ed is supposed to be validating student skills, and frankly, not everybody buys into that. Some folks think we should really just be giving students opportunities and let the chips fall where they may. And I don't happen to agree with that, but I understand why people say it. I would love to live in that world, but we don't. Having
Yeah.
said all of that, you have two choices. One is securing assessments as they occur, and the other is tracking the process after it occurred. Those are the two things that you just mentioned. There's no third choice. Trusting students is great and all, but that's not an assurance technique. That's a relationship building technique or a pedagogical technique.
And I'm
So,
quite impressed that the University of Melbourne is committed to this. So I think for the first principle, the 50%, I think they're in almost saying that it should be done this year, if not by 2026. And I think they're heading towards the more programmatic level by 2028 for all the courses that are offered or programs offered. So I think they're really setting a good bar that other institutions could look at and replicate.
and I think it's going to be a use of AI, a cyclical use of AI, because to be able to create assessments that leverage AI in an ethical and sensible way can make these large scale programmatic evaluations more doable. Right now, it's a huge resource question.
That is true. That is true. Scalability is definitely an issue with the principle number one. If you have a really large first year class, I'm not sure how feasible it is to do oral examinations, let's say. But
Yep.
that's where I think higher ed and some of the normal or traditional things that we have done really do need to shift in order to accommodate how Gen AI is going to be changing the landscape of education.
Completely agree. I also think it's time to get professors out of the exam invigilation business. Now, I
Right.
don't necessarily think we want to go to the back to the future to these large exams and lecture halls, that you might see in a movie from the 1940s. But some notion of invigilated assessments done by professionals as opposed to by people who are trying to do three other jobs at the same time makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense. Trisha's trying to build a testing center at UCSD for exactly this purpose, and I think that's the wave of the future, one way or the other.
Mhm, mhm. I definitely agree. We need more resources in this area for sure. And again, I know a lot of people in the academic integrity field recently have talked about make it someone's job. And I think
Hmm.
this is really, we need to, put resources into this area. It's been historically underfunded. We all know we need to have academic integrity, but we really do need to put money into developing secure assessments and raising awareness and building more ethical principles into higher ed.
Yeah, and I think this is where the ethical rubber meets the assessment road. That metaphor is horrendous.
We'll
But
go
yeah,
with it.
we want to trust our students. We want to believe that they're going to do the right thing. But as long as they continue to be humans under a huge amount of pressure, especially in the US where higher ed is so expensive. Okay, so now we're back from that little edit, I assume. Given that the internet is giving me a hint, maybe it's time that we begin the wrap up. So you've given lots of good advice. We've talked about the future. Is there anything else you would like to add, Amanda? What is on your mind coming up?
Yeah, I would say personally, I'm trying to advocate with our quality assurance bodies in the province of Ontario to look at adding academic integrity into our quality assurance framework, meaning that they would have to look at academic integrity at every institution. So I mentioned earlier that academic integrity is in the University of Waterloo's self-study program review, but we have our own leeway to develop that as an institution. I would really like our QA body, not only in Ontario, but across Canada, to really start integrating it and looking at it the way like TEXA does in Australia, as well as the QAA. Like the combination and the intersection of QA and AI seems to be well adopted and embraced in these other areas. And I feel like, and even in the United States too, there's that lack of adoption and interconnection. So I would really encourage anyone who can advocate with any of their QA bodies to start asking them and questioning them and proposing that they include these things. And I do think it's going to be imperative, given that with GenAI now, we're just going to have to put extra resources into validating the credentials that our students are graduating with. And I think that public trust in higher education is dependent on us being able to do that.
I totally agree. And the US actually has it worse than Canada, right? We don't even have state governments doing this in a lot of cases. It's independent accreditors who are very loosely regulated in this country. We actually have a brand new accreditor as of this week. So I
Wow.
think all of us are wondering to see us. It's the first state government run accreditor. So it'll be very interesting to see what the future holds there.
Is Chia still overseeing that across the United States in general, though, with the sub?
Yes,
Okay,
but
well,
they're a
that's
member,
good.
but they're a member-based organization, right? So
Right.
it's sort of it's not top down. It's I mean they're responsible to the Congress and the Department of Education, I think. But the fact that I don't know this tells you that it's a nebulous situation at best, and a fluid one given what's happening in Washington lately.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, on that note, any last words to share?
Well, I just want to say I'm just so proud of the work that you and Trisha have done with this book. I mean, I've known you as colleagues both for many years, and you've done amazing things over time. But I really think this is like a nice culmination of all that work and effort. And obviously, it's getting lots of traction. So kudos for you guys to keep these conversations going.
Thank you. It's colleagues like you that make us want to keep working on this. This is such a wonderful community. I say it all the time. If you're watching this and you're not an academic integrity person, consider becoming one. It's a great group of folks. Come join us at our conference, get on the website, whatever it is that might be a point of entry for you. We're a
Great.
great group.
Thanks,
Well,
David.
thanks, Amanda. It's great to see you, and it's great to have this conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.